O soul thirsting to understand man's first steps on foreign lands, let me guide you back in time, to an age of adventure and discovery, when the vast ocean was still a mystery, and uncharted lands promised untold treasures. It was the late 16th century, when Queen Elizabeth I reigned on the throne of England, and the desire to reach the great seas inspired adventurers. One of them was Sir Walter Raleigh, an explorer, a learned knight, who was granted a noble privilege by the Queen, to establish the first English colony on a vast tract of land in the New World, to be named Virginia, in honor of the Virgin Queen. This would be an outpost of England, challenging the power of the Spanish Empire on the seas. In those early years, explorations continued, with hastily drawn maps and promises of a rich land filled with fish, deer, and abundant crops. Eventually, a small island off the coast of what we now call North Carolina became home to a group of brave men, carrying with them the hope and belief in a new life, a better future. In the spring of 1587, a fleet of more than 117 men, women, and children set sail across the ocean, with John White, a talented artist and Raleigh's confidant, as governor. They landed on a wooded land surrounded by water and warmed by the sun. They named it the Roanoke Colony. With the help and peaceful relations of the Croatoan natives, the settlers began to build their new lives, building log cabins, planting crops, and having children. It was here that the first English child born on American soil was born, named Virginia Dare. Life seemed bright, but difficulties began to arise. Crops were insufficient, supplies from home were slow to arrive, and tensions with some native tribes became bitter. After heated discussions, Governor John White was forced to return to England to bring in more supplies and reinforcements. He departed in the late summer of 1587, leaving behind his family and the rest of the settlers, with a promise to return as soon as possible. But alas, Queen Elizabeth was at war with the Spanish Empire, and every ship was enlisted for the fight. It was not until 3 years later, in the summer of 1590, that John White was able to return to Roanoke. He arrived with great hope, but what he found was a dead silence. The houses were gone. The settlement had been neatly dismantled, as if there had been no sign of battle or destruction. The only thing left was a word carved into an old fence post, and another word on a nearby tree, Croatoan. John White searched for any sign, any letter, any record, any clue. But there was nothing. Everything seemed to have vanished completely. 11 and 7 people, along with the dream of a new life, had vanished into thin air. Thus was the mysterious demise of the Roanoke Colony. The question remains, haunting adventurers and historians alike: what happened to those people? Did they leave willingly, or was it a tragic fate? The island, once the promise of a new life, now stands as a symbol of an unsolved mystery. O souls who stood with us in the dead silence of Roanoke Island, where only one word remained carved into the wood. It was that mysterious word, Croatoan, that became the biggest clue, and the beginning of the most popular theory about the fate of the settlers. Governor John White, who returned to find his colony, knew the meaning of this word very well. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, and also the name of the friendly native tribe that lived on that island. They were the ones who helped the English settlers in their early difficult days. John White left them a deal before he left: if for any reason they had to leave the colony, they would carve the name of their destination on a tree or wooden post. And if they were in danger, they would carve a cross. When John White found the word Croatoan carved deeply, he did not see any cross symbol. This led him to believe that they were out of danger and had moved to Croatoan Island. John White attempted to reach Croatoan Island in search of his family and fellow countrymen. But alas, a violent storm arose, and his crew refused to continue the perilous journey. He was forced to return to England once more, leaving the mystery of Roanoke in the mists of time. For many years afterward, the story of the Roanoke settlers became a legend. However, some anecdotal evidence from later settlers has reinforced the fusion theory, English integration. The Jamestown settlers, who arrived in the early 17th century, heard stories from the native tribes about white people living in nearby villages. Some chiefs reported seeing people with English hairstyles and English dress who lived with the tribes, blue-eyed children, some natives with uncommon physical features, such as blue eyes and brown hair, were noted in later encounters, suggesting a blending of the two cultures. This theory suggests that, as their supplies ran out, the Roanoke settlers faced starvation and hostility from several other native tribes. They decided to follow the agreement and leave the colony to seek refuge elsewhere. Movement. They may have gone south, to Croatoan Island, where their native friends lived. Others may have gone further inland, seeking to join other tribes in what is now North Carolina or even Virginia. Assimilation for survival. In order to survive, they were forced to learn the ways of the natives. They abandoned the English way of life, learning to hunt, gather, and farm in the ways of the tribes. Over time, they intermarried with the natives, and their descendants became part of the new tribes. However, while this theory seems plausible and supported by circumstantial evidence, concrete evidence is lacking. No written records of the Roanoke settlers have been found. No graves have been discovered. And despite extensive excavations on Croatoan Island, now called Hatteras Island, the artifacts found, such as a gold ring engraved with a lion, a piece of slate, and part of a sword, are sufficient to prove that the English were there, but not enough to explain the entire disappearance of an entire colony. The mystery remains: if they had assimilated, why did none of them attempt to contact the English later? Had they abandoned their roots entirely, or had some other tragic fate befallen them, leaving their traces forever hidden? Souls who have contemplated with me a peaceful scenario in which the Roanoke pioneers were absorbed into a new world. Now let me lead you to a darker and more tragic scenario, a story tinged with violence and hatred, in which their disappearance was not a union, but the result of an unequal struggle. From the very beginning, relations between the English settlers and the native tribes were not always peaceful. Although John White attempted to build a peaceful relationship with the Croatoan tribe, not all the surrounding tribes were sympathetic to the strangers from another world. Among the most hostile were the Secedans. This enmity dates back to earlier expeditions. The English, in their quest for food and control of resources, did not hesitate to resort to violence. During an expedition in 1585, the first settlers, who arrived before John White, attacked a Secodan village and destroyed their crops in retaliation for the theft of a silver cup. This brutal act sowed a deep seed of hatred, and the Secedans vowed revenge. When John White returned in 1587, he attempted to heal these wounds, but it was too late. The strained relationship had turned into a constant fear. The Roanoke settlers were faced with an unfriendly environment, where every forest could harbor a danger. This theory suggests that when John White left, the Roanoke settlers were weak and vulnerable. Supplies were running low, disease was rampant, and fear was growing, leaving them without the strength to defend themselves. Surprise attack, the Secedans, or a coalition of other hostile tribes, took advantage of this opportunity to exact revenge. One night, an army of native warriors descended on the Roanoke Colony. Destruction. The attack would have been swift and brutal. Most of the settlers would have been killed, and the survivors, possibly a few women and children, would have been taken prisoner. False trail. The word Croatoan carved into the wooden post may not have been a sign of union, but a hoax or a false clue. The natives may have deliberately left this word to mislead returning Englishmen, or simply to mark where the English had lived before being exterminated. Although there is no direct physical evidence of a massacre, several later accounts support this tragic theory. Jamestown accounts. Later Jamestown settlers recorded numerous accounts of similar attacks. Several native chiefs recounted stories of white men being killed. Lack of physical evidence. Notably, no human skeletons or signs of a fight were found at the Roanoke site. This may suggest that, if an attack did occur, it may have occurred elsewhere after the settlers had left the colony. Or simply that the bodies were disposed of according to native rituals. Indirect evidence of prisoners. Some historians believe that the blue-eyed children seen later may not be evidence of peaceful union, but rather that prisoners were raised within the tribes. Like the fusion theory, however, the violence theory also lacks solid evidence to support its conclusion. It is merely one of many possibilities, a sad reminder of the inevitable confrontation between two worlds, a warning of the consequences of hatred and mistrust. The mystery of Roanoke remains. Was it a peaceful integration, or a tragic destruction? And if they were indeed killed, who did it? Although the English and Spanish were at open war in Europe, did that war spill over into the New World, threat from rival? By the late 16th century, Spain was a powerful naval power, having established colonies in Florida and the Caribbean. They viewed any English attempt to establish colonies in North America as a direct threat to their power and the trade routes for gold and silver. Exertion of power. Some scholars believe that a Spanish military mission may have been sent to seek out and destroy the Roanoke colony. Any evidence of this intervention may have been hidden or erased by the victors. If this is true, the Roanoke colony became a casualty of the Cold War between the two great European empires. Some believe that the disappearance of the Roanoke colony was not due to a single catastrophic event, but rather the result of a series of repeated hardships, famine and despair. John White returned to England with more food and supplies, suggesting that the settlers' supplies were exhausted. Famine may have been so severe that they were driven to desperation. Unsuccessful migration. Instead of uniting with the native tribes, the settlers may have attempted to move to a new location, possibly Croatoan Island as originally planned. However, because they were so weak and sick, this journey may have ended in the death of all. They left the colony voluntarily, but none survived to reach their destination. Disease. The English settlers were vulnerable to native diseases that they had never encountered. A severe epidemic could have wiped out an entire colony quickly, before anyone could record it. One of the most daring theories suggests that there was no massacre or assimilation at all. Attempted return. Some believe that, after 3 years of hopeless waiting, the settlers decided to build their own boat and attempt to return to England. This was a risky journey, and their boat may have sunk in a fierce storm in the Atlantic. Explanation 4, Croatoan. The word carved on the wooden post may have been a false clue, left to mislead potential enemies or simply a signal to John White that they had left. These theories, though less widely supported, offer a new perspective on this mysterious event. They suggest that the disappearance of the Roanoke Colony may not have been a simple story of union or violence, but a complex event with many factors. From Spanish hostility, the brutality of disease and famine, to the despair of a failed return journey, each theory attempts to fill in the gaps in the story. Yet the truth remains hidden in the sands and dust of time. These stories remain vague whispers, without solid evidence to confirm them, and the mystery of Roanoke continues to challenge our minds and imaginations. While there is no single answer, a combination of theories paints a picture of what may have happened to the 117 men, women, and children. The incorporation, the Croatoan hypothesis. This theory believes that the settlers left the colony to seek help and assimilate with the friendly Croatoan tribe, as evidenced by their trail. They survived and blended in with the native culture. The conflict, the violence hypothesis. A more tragic theory suggests that the settlers fell victim to a surprise attack from a hostile tribe such as the Descendants. They were killed or taken prisoner, and the colony was dismantled to erase their traces. Lesser-known theories. Other possibilities include that the Spanish secretly attacked and destroyed the colony, that the settlers tried to return to England on their own and drowned, or that they simply died of starvation and disease. It is worth noting that the disappearance of the Roanoke Colony may not have been a single event, but a combination of factors. It is possible that some people assimilated, while others were killed. It is possible that they faced starvation and were forced to move, and along the way, they were attacked by a hostile tribe. Although the truth about the fate of the Roanoke Colony remains unsolved, the mystery has left an enduring legacy, not only for America but for all of humanity, a symbol of risk. The story of Roanoke is a poignant reminder of the risks and hardships faced by pioneers who set foot on new, unfamiliar land. It is a lesson in the fragility of early endeavors and the importance of being fully prepared for unforeseen challenges. A bridge to the past, this mystery has spurred generations of historians and archaeologists to search, dig, and study. It has opened the door to deeper conversations about the complex relationships between European settlers and native tribes, both of cooperation and of hostility. The allure of mystery, like the Phaistos disk or the city of Atlantis, the disappearance of Roanoke has become part of folklore and history, constantly stimulating human curiosity and imagination. It has entered literature, art and cinema, becoming a cautionary tale of what is lost and what is yet to be discovered. Today, the stories of the brave men who left their homelands in search of a new life still live on. Whether they assimilated, were attacked, or were lost at sea, their fates have become an integral part of the story of the founding of a nation. The disappearance of the Roanoke Colony may forever remain a perfect mystery. But that mystery has created an enduring legacy that continues to challenge us to find answers, and to remind us of the untold stories of the early days of a new world.